Pinocchio, a story that a lot of people know and a lot of people can't decide which is the definitive version. For me, it's the Disney Pinocchio. I love the film. I mean, I even love the book to some extent, but for me, the Disney Pinocchio is just an absolute classic. It will stand as one of my all-time favorite Disney films basically ever. I mean, any film you can think of that Disney has produced, Pinocchio is number one for me. Now, I can go into the reasons why I love that Pinocchio. There are other Pinocchio adaptations out there, such as the one by Guillermo del Toro that just came out last year. That one was extremely good as well. In fact, those two are tied for my two favorite adaptations of the story. But, again, like I said, the Disney one will always reign supreme. And to tell you the truth, I think there's a reason why. I mean, the movie even teaches you, like, 3 really important lessons that you can basically learn throughout your life. One of the lessons including, do not lie. Be brave. And the most important one of all, be selfless to others. Now, what does the new one have? Don't lie. Unless you really have to get out of a jam. Ooh, this one's really good. Don't worry, you're already born with a conscience. Oh, and I cannot forget the most important one of all. Drinking root beer and not actual beer will turn you into a jackass, and you are a bad kid if you do. Why? Yep, that is the Disney live-action remake in a nutshell, in terms of lessons to be learned. I think my lesson to be learned is why I just spent a couple points on the Disney website on that poster, and you're probably wondering why. Well, that was because, again, like I said, I like the story of Pinocchio, and you know what, the poster ain't that bad. I'm not even gonna lie. So I'm gonna cover probably the topics that probably tick me off the most about this movie, but I will try and remain as positive as possible, because again, there is quite a bit of stuff I liked about the movie. I'll get into that at the end, but let me just get into, the many reasons why this movie just utterly breaks my heart to even see. I am so glad it released straight to streaming, because if this released in theaters, I probably would have just cried in the theater because of how much this hurts me. And like I said before, this movie completely replaces, the biggest lesson to be learned, no smoking, no drinking, the boys are all bad. Well, I'm going to start off with the drinking and the smoking first, because this movie completely erases that with root beer. It's not clever, it's not really that funny, it doesn't even make any sense. It makes it seem like the boys are, they're being boys. They're being punished for being kids. And truth be told, most of the problems really stemmed from Pleasure Island. Once they got onto the island, that's where the problems happened. I mean, just a lot of things just did not bode well. I mean, let's start with the coachman from the original. He was evil. He was very scary, as a matter of fact. And in this version, he just kind of appears. I mean, he doesn't even talk to Honest John and Gideon. He just appears out of nowhere and takes the boys to Pleasure Island. He's not even that frightening. He just sings a song about peer pressure, and that's it. That's, the coachman for you. He's not even remotely frightening. He's barely in the movie. And just a quick thing that kind of confused me, you got the smoke monsters in this movie, and you got, I'm not sure if it's a race category at all from the 40s, but then you got, these henchmen. I don't know if that was their intention, but I don't know. It just confused me. Okay, and we got these two. Oh my god. This movie's gonna make me cry, I swear to God. Anyway, these two show up. I mean, Keegan-Michael Key does a good job, and the animation is quite well done, but, compared to the original, The CGI just looks too realistic. I know it's a weird thing to say, but I mean, come on. At times it can look a little bit creepy, but they're fine. They show up, then they disappear, like a lot of things in this movie. But let me just talk about the one scene I know a lot of people are not looking forward to. Now, those who have seen the original know what I'm talking about. Lampwick transforming into the donkey is legit nightmare fuel. It is still pretty frightening, even to this day. And oh yeah, this movie does it, literally shot for shot. Except it's not as frightening, and as a matter of fact, that's where a majority of my complaints is. It's just very wooden. No pun intended, but the majority of the dialogue is just very dull. Whenever they repeat the same lines from the original, it just doesn't have that energy that the original one has. It's not really painful. Like, it's not like painfully bad, like, Attack of the Clones, I don't like sand, it's coarse, rough, and irritating. It's not that bad, but it's still just the acting in this. When they're repeating lines from the original film, it is very, very just... They seem very just dulled out and uninterested, honestly. Now let me just talk about a very, prominent character from each of the story, but Jiminy Cricket in this. Now, just from the original film, Jiminy Cricket in that film, he was more of he felt like a conscience. He felt like someone, that could be at your every side and make, not like your every decision, but kind of like your voice of reasoning. And even he was very stern. He took his job as a conscience very seriously. He didn't do it half-assed. He did it full tilt all the way. He was there, committed to Pinocchio at all times. Granted for a golden star, but, that's Disney for you. Of course he wants a gold star. But you get my point. He was dedicated to Pinocchio. He never... there were times where he wanted to give up, but he was always there for Pinocchio. And even when he got very ticked off at him, specifically in the Pleasure Island sequence, that's because he cared about Pinocchio. And that's not to say that he didn't care for Pinocchio, because he did. He just wasn't there like the original, like the 1940s one was. He just kind of shows up saying that, hey, I'll be your conscience, Pinocchio, but he doesn't do much like the original one did. He just kind of shows up a couple of times and that's it, and gets kicked around for most of the movie. But, he's still a good character, and, he's played nicely by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but you get my point. He just isn't as important in this adaptation as I would have hoped he would be, especially for a mentor type role. Now, there isn't much to say about this movie because, like I said, the first half of the movie, I'd say up until the Stromboli scene, it's pretty much shot for shot remade. Right when you get to the coachman sequence is where they kind of... It seems like they go on the first movie on fast forward, so... I'm just gonna skip all that because obviously I've covered like the big topics, but moving on to kind of like the grand finale with Monstro the whale. Now, it's interesting in this version because in this one, he's more closely related. It looks like the 40s one, but he's more closely related to like a sea monster type appearance versus a whale-like appearance, kind of going what the book did. Now, for me, the climax especially suffers the most because it really just seems like they wanted to wrap it up as soon as they could. They pulled a Tangled, and instead of, spoiler alert, unless you're listening that deeply, they pull a Tangled and have Pinocchio use his tears to revive Geppetto. It's literally from Tangled. I'm shocked that they didn't do a shot-for-shot remake of that movie. But, they do that, and then the movie kind of wraps up rather quickly from there. And even the ending with Monstro the Whale, even in the 40s version, it wasn't that big. But in this one, it feels like so much less than the 40s one. It feels like a straight to streaming type ending, and even the CGI is kind of where it gets a little bit wonky. But that's not to say that the CGI was always wonky, to be honest. But that's not to say that all the CGI was bad, to be quite fair. Most of the CGI was pretty decent, especially on Monstro, but like I said, I'll talk about that ending. It's just very lackluster stuff, really. And like I said, after, Geppetto is revived and Pinocchio saves him, the movie just kind of ends from there. I mean, you don't even get Pinocchio changing into a real boy. You just got, Jiminy Cricket kind of giving a half-assed explanation saying that, oh, did he turn into a real boy? Well, who knows? With this very, very, very weird shot of Pinocchio's, wooden body, turning into skin. It's kind of disturbing, I'm not gonna lie. Now, like I said, I mean, there's not much to say about the movie because, the movie is shot for shot remade. Just kind of makes you wonder, why did you remake it? I mean, they do add in some new songs here and there, but, like I said, there's not much to talk about, and there is quite a lot that I just dislike about it. But yeah, most of my problems stem from as soon as they go to Pleasure Island is where most of my problems come in. And, I'll say this. I'm going to get into the positives here, but I'll say this. It could have been a lot worse, to be honest. It's still a very, very poorly done movie, especially from a director that is known for doing good movies. But it just sucks that this was the outcome. Alright, now moving on into the positives, because like I said, I don't want to crap on this movie way too much to the point where it's just well, did I like anything about this movie? I liked quite a few things. Tom Hanks, he does a good job, as always, a weird performance here and there, and, at times you're thinking, the original did it best because, obviously he has that old man-like charm, but you know what? Tom Hanks pulls it off. He does a decent job for what he's given. Like I said, the CGI is wonky here and there, but it is pretty good. I can't even think of a whole lot of positives to say because the more positives I try to think of, the more problems I think of. It is entertaining. If you want to pass your time and you don't feel like watching the original, I don't see why not, just watch the original. Then I guess you could watch this version. It isn't that big of a time waster. I mean, one of the things I can think of that this movie improves on is the fact that, as soon as Pinocchio comes alive, Geppetto isn't just like, hey, Pinocchio, you're getting your ass straight to school to get an education. I will say, at least in this version, they do give it time. Through a montage, obviously, but obviously, time passes before he officially goes to school, which I do like, because that's how Geppetto, I feel like that's how a lot of us would do it, spend time with your, wooden son before sending him to school, So, there's another positive. The Blue Fairy, yes, I get it, it's another race-swapped character. I don't give a rat's ass. She does a great job. Despite showing up in the film literally once. And that's to bring Pinocchio alive. Then she disappears. I mean, good paycheck, I guess. Now, there is a line that Geppetto says that will always stick in my mind until the end of time, when Disney crashes and burns after all these years. I know that day is coming. I know that day is coming. And when that day does come, there will always be a quote that Geppetto says that will be Disney Plus's new quote. I got some nice fresh garbage here for you, Sophia, when he feeds this, seagull. Again, I'm skipping a whole lot of new characters here. There's a Sophia the seagull, which is a new character, and also, you got a ballerina puppet and, her, Marion. I don't even know what to say. I'm too tired to even talk about this, honestly. This movie's just absolutely draining to talk about, but anyway, you get the point. I'm skipping over two new characters, but that quote will always be Disney's new quote as of right now. I got some nice fresh garbage for you. And that perfectly exemplifies this movie. It is hot, fresh garbage. And you know what? At least it's not hot, stinky garbage where it's, intolerable to watch. But you know what? Considering how much I love the original, it was pretty close to being unwatchable. Take it easy, everyone. See ya.